Beetlejuice is a classic 1988 film directed by the absolute king known as Tim Burton. This movie is filled with characters that have a surprising amount to unpack, but we'll be taking more of a focus towards Lydia, the Maitlands, and the ghost with the most himself, to explore psychoanalysis and apply Freud's theories to our beloved characters. Now, before we go any further, we need to know, what is psychoanalysis? Many definitions will often tell you that psychoanalysis is a set of therapeutic techniques used to treat mental disorders. It is also the set of theories that breaks apart the consciousness and aims to understand how the two sides of our unconscious mind works together to produce who we present ourselves to be on a conscious level. The term psychoanalysis was explored by Sigmund Freud, who created the theories we'll be using. Two of these theories are topographic and structural theory. Topographic theory hypothesizes that our mental apparatus is divided into the conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. This is then expanded into structural theory. This divides our psyche into what's known as the id, ego, and superego. The id being our unconscious level with our basic impulses, the superego our preconscious level with our morals, and finally the ego, the conscious level who operates rationally, usually, and is often what is presented to the world. Think of the id, ego, and superego like the biological process of homeostasis. The id and superego pull on either end to try and create a balance, being the ego. However, sometimes it can overcorrect and go more to one side, and then it takes a bit to pull back to a neutral level. Now, let's see how our main characters represent these three. Our black and white striped demon, Beetlejuice, represents the id. Throughout the movie, we see that Beetlejuice is often irrational and impulsive. When he first meets the Maitlands, this fact is one of the first things highlighted about his character.
You know what's really beautiful about this? You two kids picked me. You didn't have to, but you picked me. It makes me want to kiss you guys. Come on, come on, give me one. Come on, you're hard one, huh? All right, let's get down to business.
He desperately wants things to go his way and demands immediate gratification. When he does not receive this, he gets visibly frustrated.
Where are you? You bunch of losers! You're working with a professional here!
The superego is both Adam and Barbara Maitland. The two are always together and work in unison, so it's logical to combine them. The Maitlands clearly have a fine set of morals and ideals. We see from the start that they have a drive for perfection, represented first by Adam's scale model of the town. We see the strive for perfection and keeping their ideals even after death, when they try to keep the house the way they want it by trying to remove the Dietz family. Lastly, the ego is represented by Lydia Dietz. Lydia is typically quite rational and sits between Beetlejuice and the Maitlands in terms of her behavior. She tests her reality and allows herself to think on her decisions, but isn't set on perfection. However, she is susceptible to being swayed slightly more towards one side or the other, either the Maitlands or Beetlejuice, similar to how the ego can be swayed more towards the id or superego in certain situations. Beetlejuice and the Maitlands to Lydia are very similar to the shoulder angels and devils we so often see in other media, invisible to everyone else, but give guidance to the character. As Lydia represents the ego, I thought it would be best to explore the development of her character first. She is important to many of the film's key events, but there are many outside influences such as her parents. So, what about the others? Let's make this segment rather quick. So, Charles and Delia Dietz have some characteristics of both the id and superego, being impulsive with many decisions, but also having their strict ideals and striving for perfection. Their development comes late in the movie during the climax, however. Otho tries to come off as an ego or superego, but we can easily see through this facade and see that he's really only there for selfish reasons, making him an id, a quiet one at that. What I've seen from the supporting characters, all the living ones, such as Jane and Maxie, are all id, being impulsive and demanding, working only to further their own financial gains. The dead ones are all egos, as they hold a sense of rationality and clear-mindedness, such as Juno or Miss Argentina. They in fact help the Maitlands with their own development. So now for the main part of this chapter, Lydia's development through the movie. Right from her introduction, Lydia is presented as a moody, gothic teen with hints at past trauma that has led her to her depressive state. It's clear that she's not getting the attention or recognition she needs from her father.
Dad!
Can't you see I'm relaxing in here?
Well, I want to tell you what I saw.
What is the point of my coming up here if you people won't let me relax?
And her stepmother doesn't know how to interact with her and is often dismissive.
It's a little private joke that Lydia and I share.
It's not a joke.
Yes, it is. Just today she tried to convince me that this house is haunted.
Her development starts when she meets the Maitlands, as they're the first people who truly see her. The Maitlands, representing the superego, help keep her from slipping into a deeper depressive state, and with their ideals and morals, they aim to help Lydia. Lydia joins them to help gain a sense of perfection in her life again. When attempts fail to make her parents listen, she becomes more stressed and desperate. That's when our id, Beetlejuice, makes himself known to Lydia.
Are you a ghost too?
I'm the ghost with the most, babe.
Beetlejuice tells Lydia that he can be the answer to all her problems and can provide her with exactly what she wants. When Lydia first meets Beetlejuice, the Maitlands are not around. This means no superego to counter the id.
Kids in your imagination. Just say it!
No. I want to talk to Barbara.
No, you don't need the Barbara, just say it!
Lydia hesitates at first, but we can see she's about to give in. This is when the Maitlands, her superego, come back and pull her back to a state of reasoning.
Beetlejuice. He told me that if I let him out, he would take me to the other side to find you.
No, Lydia. We're dead.
The Maitlands are only able to do so much, as the characters around Lydia display so much of the id's impulses. Her appearance and oath drives Lydia to the point of utter irrationality and is no longer able to resist the promises from Beetlejuice, especially after her parents' greed had led to the Maitlands getting exorcised, representing the superego being removed and the id taking hold. While Beetlejuice was indeed helpful for a few moments and held up his promise, he did quickly get back to fulfilling his own desires. A bit of a side note, I've found low socially anxious people make faster decisions under stress, and seeing as Lydia is not afraid just to talk to ghosts like it's normal, I think she's the least socially anxious of them all. Lydia's depression could have also played a role in her decision making. Depression is a very complex subject, however, sometimes poorer choices can be made, such as the famous Dale scene, where Lydia and the Maitlands possess the family to try and scare them. However, they only make the problem worse. Lydia might not have been able to properly think the plan all the way through, but take this with a grain of salt, I am no expert. At first, Beetlejuice seems like a relatively simple character in relation to the id. He's selfish, impulsive, irrational, aggressive, and downright dirty.
We need to work something out ourselves. We just have to talk.
Yeah.
Hey!
Excuse me? What?
Excuse me.
However, I believe there are some more layers to Beetlejuice, if you take the time to really break down the id and how it's represented in this film. To begin understanding, we need to know some of the rules of the Netherworld. Everybody's death and afterlife experiences are personal to how they lived and died. If you commit suicide, you become a civil servant in the afterlife, and exorcism is like death for the dead. Once that happens, you become a lost soul. The id often works on the pleasure principle, which maximizes pleasure while avoiding pain and the pursuit of tension reduction. It's stated in the movie that Beetlejuice used to be a civil servant in the Netherworld before he defected. This means that his cause of death was suicide related. To me, this indicates that in life, Beetlejuice would have been in much pain and suicide was probably the final option to avoid this pain, but found that it had followed him into the afterlife. Now he's constantly trying to find ways to distract himself or find ways to help maximize his pleasure.
Yeah, here I come, baby. Oh, yeah.
Freud had observed that the id is mainly the result of two primary instincts, being Eros and Thanatos, or alternatively, life and death. Eros is described as the preserver of all things, which includes elements of sexuality and self-preservation. We know that Beetlejuice is desperate to escape the confines of his afterlife and manipulates anybody he can to say his name 3 times, so he can enter the living world and cause chaos. This could be seen as an attempt to not be forgotten and to be seen, which is a common theme in this movie. At the climax of the film, Beetlejuice makes it his goal to become living once again by marrying Lydia. This is once again in the pursuit of self-preservation, Perhaps he realizes that being exorcised is now a real possibility, and now that he has a living human that can see him, he takes his opportunity to become living again to avoid becoming a lost soul. So, if Beetlejuice is so set on self-preservation, why did he kill himself in the first place? Because death promises peace and escape from what suffering life can bring. When Beetlejuice pulls out the wedding ring at the ceremony, it's still attached to a finger, which Beetlejuice responds with,
I'm telling you, honey, she meant nothing to me. Nothing at all.
implying a previous marriage that failed. In a draft of the script, it was going to be mentioned that Beetlejuice hung himself while drunk, due to something that happened with a woman, presumably said ex-wife. Although this is cut content, it can still be implied through how Beetlejuice looks. Paler skin can often be the result of insufficient oxygen. Some situations that cause your skin to turn pale are medical emergencies, such as choking or the inability to breathe. His bruised eye appearance can also relate to this, as the causes of black eye are usually the results of trauma to the head or face, which causes bleeding beneath the skin. This is all relating back to his hanging. I suppose this all subtly shows that Beetlejuice does or actually has grown as a character. While it's not blatantly obvious, and some of it occurred off-screen, it's good to point out that this vile person is capable of developing, and hidden under there is a deeply broken man. Now, I need to touch on why the id, ego, and superego were useful for breaking down Beetlejuice characters. Before I started on this essay, I thought I knew this movie pretty well. But now, I don't think I can view it the same way. But that's a good thing. Although I didn't get to dive as deep into the other characters as I did with Lydia and Beetlejuice, I still have a greater knowledge. Having applied Beetlejuice to the ids, then breaking down the id into its parts, I have found deeper meaning into what is usually seen as offhand remarks, such as these clips.
You know, so I was just wondering, could you help me get out of here?
I don't want to get in.
Why?
The only one I think I can deal with is Edgar Allan Poe's daughter.
Lydia and Beetlejuice at first glance don't seem remotely similar, but now that I have the understanding of Beetlejuice committing suicide to escape his pain, only to regret his decision, Lydia is exactly the same. She was planning to kill herself to escape her reality and join the Maitlands in death.
By the time you read this, I will be gone.
When Beetlejuice responds with,
Why?
his tone changes and his facade drops. As he knows the true reality of the afterlife, and might actually show some concern for this girl, but quickly pulls up the facade after he realizes he had dropped it. His line of,
The only one I think I can deal with is Edgar Allan Poe's daughter. I think she understands me.
also takes new meaning when you understand that Lydia and Beetlejuice have a fair bit in common deep down.